we completed with SA 315, 330 and 450, yes, which was regarding the risk response and reporting. Yes, SA 315, identifying and assessing the risks of material misstatement through understanding the entity and its environment. And over there in that standard, first we saw the sources of misstatement, and ODI. And omission of financial statement, element, account or information, omission of disclosures which is required in accordance with GAAP, disclosures not in conformity with GAAP, difference between the judgments of the auditor and the management, incorrect accounting estimate, inaccuracy in gathering or processing data from which the financial statements are prepared. Then after that we talked about the risk assessment procedures, IAOR. Inquiries of management and others within the entity, analytical procedures, observation and inspection, and then also a few related activities. Then after that, understanding the entity and its environment, you need to understand 6 things. External, internal, then the past, the future, and the accounting system and the internal control system. External, the industry, regulatory and the other external factors. Internal, the nature of the entity including its operations and ownership structure, governance structure. Measurement and review of the entity's financial performance. The objective strategies and the related business risks. The selection and application of accounting policies, and also the 5 components of the internal control system, namely CRISM. What is CRISM? Control environment, risk assessment, information system and communication, control activities and monitoring. Then we also saw information technology, what are the benefits and what are the risks associated with the use of information technology. And then after that, finally, we assess the risk of material misstatement, which could be at the financial statement level or assertion level. And further, what did we study? Okay, assertion level, further you need to check which assertion is the risk. Right. Then after that, we saw that when does an RMM require special audit consideration? Yani कि when does it become an SR? And a significant risk, when the risk is a risk due to fraud, related parties, complexity of the transactions, unusual transactions, significant measurement uncertainty, or significant changes in the economic regulatory environment. And then we saw some examples of conditions and events that may indicate an RMM. Like, operations in regions that are economically unstable, and operations, then the lack of personnel with appropriate financial reporting skills, investigations by regulatory organization, shortages of supplies, change in the supply chain of the company, right? So those were conditions and events which indicate a RMM, right? Then after SA 315, we came to SA 330, the auditor's responses to assessed risks. So first in the standard, we talked about the overall responses to the RMM at the financial statement level. And we said more. More of an attitude of professional skepticism, more experienced staff, more supervision, more using work of an expert, more extensive audit evidence, more persuasive audit evidence, more number of locations to be covered, more of an element of surprise in the audit, more procedures at the period end date rather than at an interim date. And it says a combined approach of TOC and substantive would be an effective approach. Right. Then after that, we talked about tests of control and substantive procedures. What if you've performed TOC in the previous audit and that there is no change in control since they were last tested? Then its standard says that auditor, you need to perform the retesting of controls at least once in every 3rd audit. If based on understanding of the entity, there is no change in control since they were last tested, the auditor should perform the retesting of controls at least once in every 3rd audit. So 1 audit you did TOC, 2 audits you can go on a holiday. Then again the 4th audit you'll have to do TOC. Again 2 holidays, then again TOC. However, what are the circumstances which will warrant the auditor to reduce the period of retesting of controls? Weak control environment, weak monitoring of controls, weak general IT controls, changes in the personnel, changes in the circumstances, nature and size, and also inappropriate manual intervention. And then substantive procedures, we have char prakar. You understand, no? Test of details, substantive, analytical, agreeing the financial statements to the underlying records, and examining material journal entries. And what was the first line in substantive procedures? Irrespective of the assessed RMM, the auditor shall design and perform substantive procedures for each material class of transaction, account balance, presentation, and disclosure. Right, so substantive procedures, and why are we performing? To obtain the sufficient appropriate audit evidence. What if you don't get the sufficient appropriate audit evidence? Then attempt to obtain further evidence by performing alternative procedures. What if you still don't get the evidence? Then qualified opinion or a disclaimer of opinion. Right, then in essay 330, they have also described what do you mean by nature, timing and extent of audit procedures. कि कैसे check करना है, कब check करना है और कितना check करना है. Right, then we came to the last in this series, essay 450, which was regarding evaluation of misstatements identified during the audit. है ना, identified misstatements, uncorrected misstatements, corrected misstatements, factual misstatements, judgmental misstatements and projected misstatements. Right, then we said step 1 in the standard, auditor accumulates all the misstatements identified during the audit other than those which are clearly trivial. Then for these identified misstatements, you need to check whether the revision of the overall audit strategy is necessary. Yes, the audit strategy may require revision. One, if the misstatements have already exceeded materiality or where they may exceed materiality. Then identified misstatements, CMC. है ना, communicate to management and request to correct. Now what is there with you? Uncorrected misstatements. Now for uncorrected misstatements, you shall reassess materiality. But while reassessing materiality, not only to consider the uncorrected misstatements related to the current year, but also those related to the previous year or years. Then uncorrected misstatements, CMC, communicate to management, request to correct. And if they don't agree, written representations from the management, communicate to those charged with governance and modify opinion in accordance with essay 705. Right. Yes, so yesterday this was the risk-based audit approach which we discussed. This is the risk-based audit approach. Risk, response and reporting, 315, 330, 450. Three best friends together. These are the three standards which we discussed yesterday. And then 450, I had discussed one more question with you. Circumstances due to which misstatement could be evaluated as material. We said all examples of qualitative material misstatement. It affects the ratios, it affects the debt covenants, it affects the regulatory requirement, it affects the segment information. Right? So those were all examples.